Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, this is going to be the full build guide showcase for the Smelter's Wrath Forge Guard. So this build is built around Worldsplitter. If you don't know, Worldsplitter is a new item that was released in patch 1.1. The idea is it gives you a bunch of area based on your mana cost of skill. So right now we have a 65 mana cost on Smelter's Wrath, and that is giving us some absurd like 120% like increased area for melee skills or something like that. And that normally would increase the area of a skill, but for Smelter's Wrath, because of the way that it functions, the devs, whenever they added area, they made it so that instead area does not increase the area of Smelter's Wrath, it increases the charge speed. So you're spending less time sitting there charging. So that's what this does, is it increases our charge speed significantly. As you can tell, we're charging for like maybe 0.75 seconds or something like that, and it feels amazing in comparison to old Smelter's Wrath, because Smelter's Wrath before, like, you'd be charging for half a millennia, and being able to charge faster not only makes you a lot tankier as you're not standing still constantly, but you're also able to put out more DPS than you were if you were to just sit there channeling Smelter's Wrath for 2 whole seconds, because you get to do it more often. You also get to put out your buffs more often. It just, all in all, it feels way better to have that that channeling speed than not. Now, if you haven't already, I would heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as that is the best way of currently supporting me, and that's the best way of showing me that you want more content like this on YouTube. Now, let's talk about the build more in detail, shall we? So, my thoughts on this build are, I think it's good enough. It doesn't have enough single target damage for me to be like amazed by it. I did make a video the other day talking about how I dislike Forge Guard right now. I really dislike it, but this build is good despite being a Forge Guard. Like, for instance, if I was playing like Paladin right now, I would easily have like an extra 1,000, maybe 1.5 thousand HP just by being a Paladin. If I was a Void Knight, in theory, you could obviously, like, you can't what would it be called, echoed this, but like if I was a Void Knight, I would probably have more damage or whatever, right? So the biggest problem here is that we're playing a Forge Guard. Forge Guard's passive tree, even after the rework, is very mediocre. There's only one thing that's very good at, and it is taking less damage over time, which is relevant right now, as damage over time is a killer, but it doesn't help you in anything else, because all the other passive trees are good at, doing other stuff like HP stacking, damage stacking, mana stacking, all these other things that are good for you. Forge Guard isn't good at all of it, because you have passives like this that give you +2 strength per point, which is like almost bad. Like, it's just like terrible, just absolutely terrible. But it's okay. This build is good enough despite being a Forge Guard, and that's usually what Forge Guard builds end up being, is good despite being its passive tree being bad. So let's talk about how we got this to function. So like I said, we're utilizing Worldsplitter. Another skill that we're utilizing that is giving us a very large amount of damage that people don't really realize often is we're using Abyssal Echoes. So usually when we're playing a skill that does not hit that often, like Smelter's Wrath, we are not applying that many stacks of Armor Shred or other things for buffs. Like, for instance, Smelter's Wrath deals more damage based on the ignites on the enemy up to a cap. This used to not be capped because it was bugged, but now it is capped, thank God. But yeah, it will deal more damage based on your armor shred stacks on the opponent, and of course your ignite stacks and stuff like that. And we just don't have a way of applying them in a good enough manner if we're just channeling Smelter's Wrath. But thankfully, Abyssal Echoes has become one of the best skills for this slot, and that is because if you cast it, it like pulses 4 times on the ground. It applies very nice armor shred stacks and like better armor shred stacks with more effect. It also applies ignites. It also applies things on hit as well, like things like frailty, doom as well. Just putting down multiple Abyssal Echoes just allows you to simply do everything you need to do with Smelter's Wrath without needing to fuck around with like minions. A lot of people, they try to utilize minions for your Smelter's Wrath, but the problem is in late game, you literally don't have the survivability for the minions to survive long enough to give you that damage, so it ends up being very bad. That's why Abyssal Echoes is better, because it doesn't die. It just sits there and does its job, which is great. So that's the first skill that we're utilizing. Of course, we're also getting like 20% more damage against blinded enemies, stuff like that. So it's just all around, just all-star of a skill. Next skill we're going to be talked about is, of course, Vengeance. Vengeance proccing Healing Hands has actually been pretty good for this build. Not only does it give us 2 hits per time we hit with Vengeance, which of course gives us more procs for the ignites and stuff like that and help us stack up max ignites. Also as well, it gives us less damage taken after we've used it, and it gives us less damage taken from the rebuke as well. So against bosses, we're not like, we can pretty much face tank a lot of things as long as we Vengeance them beforehand. It also gives us a massive 20% more damage while channeling while preparing a rebuke, so we get 2 stacks of rebuke. And of course, on single target, they're not going to be able to hit both of our stacks very easily. And because of the fact that our channeling speed is way far faster than before, like our charge speed, it means that this 20% more damage is significantly more relevant. This would not be a relevant amount of damage if we took 2 seconds every single time to channel Smelter's Wrath, because by the time Smelter's Wrath was done, the damage buff would be gone. But thanks to the fact that we're charging faster, we actually get to benefit from this buff more consistently. Same thing with Reversal. Reversal is also giving us increased damage taken from enemies, and this also only lasts like 2 seconds, and this normally wouldn't be usable if our Smelter's Wrath didn't charge that fast. So we're getting so much extra damage just by charging faster, but there is one caveat, sadly. So EHC, in their infinite wisdom, there's nodes inside Smelter's Wrath that give you more damage per second charge on Smelter's Wrath, and these nodes, they count the actual charge time. So like, for instance, if you reduce it with charge speed, you're actually reducing your damage. And I think that is the dumbest thing ever, because like, why does it need to work like that? You should be able to, like, it should benefit from the normal charge time, and then you get the charge speed, and then Smelter's Wrath would actually be an insanely good skill. It would actually be doing like maybe 2 times the amount of damage, but of course we're charging it faster, so we're dealing even more damage. I would not play this build without Worldsplitter right now. Other people probably will, but the main reasoning why is that when you play around with that charge speed and how fast it is, you really just can't go back. It feels so good against the event mobs, being able to just simply do multiple stacks of Smelter's Wrath, like just being like bam, 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 bam. It makes clear feel so much better. It makes single target so much better. I really can't go back to utilizing a non-Worldsplitter weapon on this build. I really don't know how I could. It just feels so good having that charge speed be so much faster, and it's made Smelter's Wrath go from like an F tier to me, a skill, to maybe around B tier, around there, I think, mainly because, you know, it actually does a decent amount of damage. Now, I just want to let you know, I put a lot of investment into this character. There's a lot of good gear. The whole reason why we're playing this build in the first place is the access to the flat melee damage on the Worldsplitter, so keep that in mind. But overall, I enjoyed the build. I don't think it's a good build at all, but you can play it if you want to. With all that being said, this has been Dread. I'm going to go in game and talk about the build more in detail. Bye. Alright, here we are in game with the character, so we're going to go over skills real quick. So we have Smelter's Wrath here. Mainly what we care about is getting up all the way here to detonation for the flat mana. Also, it releases it in a Nova instead of a cone, which is important for clear, as it makes it feel much better than if you would without it. Then we also grab Crucible, which adds another flat 10 mana to our Smelter's Wrath. We want to add as much mana as possible, so we get max benefit out of Worldsplitter here. Lots of extra area, lots of extra base crit. Then 1 point travel here in Brightsmith, 3 points into Valiance for the 60% more hit damage against rares and bosses. Allows us to kill rares and bosses much quicker, although to note, a lot of the event mobs, a lot of the tanky ones that are not actually rare, like a lot of the white mobs, so you will have less damage versus them, and it is very annoying considering they have as much HP as some of the bosses do, which is disgusting. Then 2 points travel into Blacksmith's Breath. We get plenty of charge speed. We don't really need this. 2 points travel into Heavy Strike. Normally we'd fill this out, but we actually don't spend that long channeling, so it doesn't matter. Then we grab 1 point into Tempering Blows to give us more hit damage per ignite stack. It goes all the way up to 150% more damage. Now we also grab these notes here, Tempered Blow. It reduces our charge speed, but that's because we have such a fast charge speed that this actually ends up giving us a decent chunk of damage, not only from the more damage per second from the base Smelter's Wrath, but also the more damage per second. So this is giving us maybe like 40 to 50% more damage here. Sure, it makes us channel just slightly bit slower, but like as you can see, we're absurdly quick with it, so it's not that big of a deal, and it's just a decent way of giving us a little bit more damage. And that's pretty much it for Smelter's Wrath. Let's talk about Abyssal Echoes. Abyssal Echoes, like I said, we're going for Screaming Rifts and Shrieking Echoes. This makes it so that whenever we cast it, it stays on the ground for a few and then applies Abyssal Echoes multiple times. That's very good for us as we add a bunch of armor shred stacks on the opponent to get a lot of more damage, as the negative armor gives us more damage with our hits. We also grab 4 points in Embracing the Darkness. This not only gives us attack speed for our Vengeance to make it feel better, but it also gives us 20% more damage versus blinded enemies, and we have blind chance on the tree. We grab the 1 point here, Potent of Corruption. This not only the ignite chance here, it also gives us access to the ignite chance we already have, so we can apply ignites utilizing our Abyssal Echoes. And that's pretty much it for Abyssal Echoes. Now, for a Vengeance in tandem with Healing Hands here, we have Vengeance, which gives us a riposte, which gives us 80% less damage taken whenever we riposte something. We get 2 of them thanks to Zealot's technique, and then while we're preparing our riposte, we get 20% more global damage, which will apply to Smelter's Wrath if we use it beforehand. We have a decent amount of attack speed from it. Riposte hits cannot crit, doesn't really matter for us with the way that we're setting up our less damage taken. Then 5 points into Bolster, less damage taken if we've hit an enemy with Vengeance in the last 2 seconds, which is always with our setup, and increased armor as well. Always great, always wonderful. And that's pretty much it for Vengeance. Healing Hands here, mainly, we're just using it as a movement skill, and we're also proccing it on melee hit with Vengeance. So these both combined means that, you know, we can just usually use Vengeance to heal us up a little bit. It's not like that big of a deal. Like it helps. We also get more damage versus the undead enemies, which is most of all of the undead enemies right now because of the event. 10% more damage here for free. It's like stereotypical Healing Hands tree, just kind of filler, to be honest, just allowing us to have a good movement skill and also get a little bit of healing. That's pretty much it for Healing Hands. Reversal, stereotypical reversal, literally just increased enemy damage taken mainly, and just some movement speed so we can catch up. And we also grab the dodge rating while on cooldown. This is actually very good for us as we're converting dodge into armor with this node, and it gives us a decent chunk of armor whenever we're spamming our reversal. And that's pretty much it for the skills. Let's talk about the passives, shall we? So for the passives that matter, mainly we like this node for our Vengeance, as it allows us to gain more mana back whenever we're using it. It's actually one of the main reasons we're using it, because as we're channeling a 65 mana cost skill and we're spamming it, it costs a lot of mana per second. So we definitely need a lot of extra love here. Void Knight, just 10 points to get to Abyssal Echoes, the 5 points here, the melee damage leashes life. This is all the melee damage you'll ever need ever, as it's punty for what we're doing, as we're doing very large amounts of damage to individual mobs. Then Paladin here, just grabbing a decent amount of HP here. I'm grabbing this for elemental resistance cap, although I need like a little bit more lightning res, but it's not like that big of a deal right now. But mainly, and we also want the blind chance here for the Abyssal Echo, so we get the 20% more damage. And that's pretty much it for Paladin. Then for Forge Guard here, Forge Guard, it's just the stereotypical no. It's like the ignite chance here, so we get the cap on ignite for our Smelter's Wrath, getting the flat damage here for free, and we also get a decent amount of fire and fizz pen. Here just doesn't really matter much for us here. Then eventually getting some crit chance and the crit multi per strength. We're not really building that much strength, though this node doesn't really matter, but we do need some crit chance because we're not going for the auto crit node like a lot of Smelter's Wrath builds go for. We're actually just going for the base crit from our World Splitter. We're getting like 20% crit from our World Splitter, so we have 25% base crit. So we just need a little bit of crit on the tree and on our gear to cap our crit. 5 points here gives us a decent amount of more damage based on our mana cost. We get like 30% more damage based on this, which is great, and some mana regen, which we always need. Strength and health, always a good note here. More crit chance, more crit multi, less damage taken from dots is very useful because dying to dots is usually something that happens a lot in last Epoch right now. And that's pretty much it for Forge Guard. Like I said, our crit is almost capped. I'm missing like just a little bit of crit here, to cap our crit. And that's pretty much it for the passive tree. Let's talk about blessings, shall we? So crit chance here right now, we're actually running this to cap our crit, although eventually if you had better gear than me, you can go for crit multi instead. Here we're actually grabbing the ward when hit. This actually reduces damage we take by a decent chunk because it's just like 30 less damage taken on hit 30% of the time on a lot of trash when they're all hitting me. There's not really much else you can grab here, maybe lightning rest maybe. Then here all resistance, we're actually getting our crit avoid cap from Leonine Great Helm here, so we actually don't need the crit avoid from here, so we're actually just running the all res. Then here we're actually running endurance from Spirits of Fire. The reason why we're running endurance is because we get plenty of armor while we're channeling Smarter's Wrath here, so we actually don't need the armor from this specific node, so the endurance getting us capped is better for us. Then of course here our percent armor, and this is pretty much it for blessings. Let's talk about gearing. For idols, literally just increase HP idols. There's no idols that actually help us in any significant portion or way, so just grabbing as much HP as possible so we can build even more damage on our gear. So helmet here, percent damage, melee damage, HP, pretty good helmet, all things considered. Amulet here, crit multi, res, HP, frailty. Eventually you'd want that to be double HP, although I got this as a perfect Oracle amulet on the Merchant's Guild. Getting 20% less damage over time taken on top of all of our less damage over time means that we don't instantly fall over when damage over time hits us. Worldsplitter here, I have melee flat fire on it. It could be either melee flat fire or melee flat fizz. Either way, it doesn't really matter. Just you want either of those because that's how our pen works. Then for our chest here, Titan Heart with two mods, +3 to lunge for melee damage percent and multi-strike for melee damage percent, trying to get as much damage as possible in this setup. Ring here, crit chance, mana regen, HP, resistance, like you can see here. Belt, we're running Shattered Chains for the more damage per doom, so we get 20% more damage. It also gives us a massive 60% melee damage as well, and armor and HP. Really hard to ignore this belt right now. You probably want a better HP mod than what I have, but like whatever. Then for the ring here, a 3LP Siphon of Anguish with mana regen, HP, endurance, pretty perfect ring, all things considered. We get a decent amount of mana regen so that, when we're doing this constantly with our Smarter's Wrath, we don't just instantly go out of mana. Then for our gloves here, HP, crit chance, and eventually on that prefix you want like strength or something like that. But this allows us to turn our armor into degen against armor, or resistance to degens, which is good as, like I said, dots are very bad right now. Then boots here, HP, movement speed on a terrace path, pretty much perfect. Any movement speed boots would work here. You go for melee crit multi boots if you really wanted to for even more damage, but for me right now, I think a terrace path is the way to go so we don't instantly die. Then for a relic here, this is like ridiculous relic, by the way. Don't get this. Just go for the mana regen, crit multi, and maybe the strength if you can manage it. Then like resistances on the suffix and maybe HP as well. And that's pretty much it for the gear. That's pretty much it for the passives. Pretty much it for the idols. With all that being said, this has been Dread. I'll have to go do something else. Bye.